Hi there, welcome to our introductory course on MicroStrategy Workstation. Today we are going to be taking you through the process of creating your first MicroStrategy dossier using their Workstation tool. We've included all of the different project files that you might need so you can sit down and follow along with us. And if you like this tutorial and you want to learn more, you can always check out microstrategy.com/education. Let's get started. Let's start by downloading Workstation first. The first thing you are going to want to do is go to community.microstrategy.com/products. So you'll see I have the website pulled up here. It's probably going to ask you to log in. You can just create a new account, but you'll see that I'm logged in here as Louise Andenmatten and I have my email. Quick note, they might ask you for your work email instead of your Gmail. So if you aren't able to create an account using your Gmail, try your work email instead. The next thing we're going to do once we are on the product download site is we're going to go to the product categories section. So you'll see I'm under MicroStrategy 2021, but for the sake of downloading this desktop application, which is what Workstation is, we're going to go to the desktop application section here. So once we click that and we give it a second to load, we're going to see that we have either the MicroStrategy application at the bottom that's available for us or Workstation 2021. So for the sake of this tutorial that we're going to go through, we're going to want to download the Workstation 2021. And that's always going to be the latest update. You don't have to worry about that. All you have to do is decide if you want to download for Windows or for Mac, and click that and get the download file going. So I personally have a Mac, so I'm going to download my Mac file here. You are going to have to just accept the terms and conditions. You can read a little bit more about it if you wanted to, but again, it's always going to be the latest version of MicroStrategy Workstation, and it's a free tool, so you don't have to worry about paying or anything like that. All you have to do is click the red download button. So we'll click that, and then we'll see that we have our Workstation that's starting to download there. Now, while we wait for that to load, let's talk a little bit about what Workstation is. So Workstation is MicroStrategy's free desktop tool. So that means that you can download it for free and you can use it for free. If you already are a MicroStrategy customer, you can also then connect your MicroStrategy Workstation tool to the current environment that your administrator or your organization might have. But the beauty of it is, if you don't have MicroStrategy, you can download Workstation and you don't have to pay for a fee or even a free trial or anything like that. You can use it for free for the rest of your days if you wanted to. So that's how MicroStrategy Workstation works. So I already have mine downloaded, but if you don't already have yours downloaded, you would just wait for the package to download, then open it, and then go through the installation settings. It's really easy. There's like 3 or 4 clicks, maybe max, to do, and then it'll pull up your MicroStrategy Workstation instance. So let me go back to my main screen here and actually show you what the MicroStrategy Workstation tool looks like. So I'm going to open it up right now. Now, when you open your MicroStrategy Workstation tool for the first time, your screen is going to look completely empty. Mine has a couple different things because I have a few environments that I've already connected to. But again, you don't need to have a connection to do any of this, and you can do this completely as a blank slate, which is awesome. So let's talk a little bit about what's available in MicroStrategy Workstation. We'll go through that left-hand side panels that are available there. So you'll see under the analysis tool, these are the different types of objects that you can create with MicroStrategy. So we can create dossiers. Those are our dashboards. We can create dataset cubes, some tabular reports if we wanted. There are hyperintelligence cards, which is a totally different topic that we can address another time, things along those lines. We also have an administration section. Obviously, that's not applicable to our workshop today, but that's where your admin would go to monitor the MicroStrategy instance, make sure everything's looking good, things along those lines. And then the last section that we have is our resources tab. If you do get lost or you want to learn a little bit more about MicroStrategy, there's a couple of really good links that you can click there. I really recommend checking out our community page. There's a lot of knowledge-based articles, videos, tutorials that you can access there. We do also have an expert.now feature available, so if you want to talk to somebody at MicroStrategy to get a question answered, you can do that as well. But yeah, those 3 sources are probably really good ones for you to check out, especially if you're new to MicroStrategy in general. So now that we know what MicroStrategy Workstation looks like and how it's all split up, let's actually get to building a dashboard. So you'll see I have this dossier piece and there's a little plus sign on the side, so I'm going to go ahead and click that. It's going to give me the option to connect to an environment because, again, I have a couple that I've already connected to in the past. But for the sake of this tutorial, we're going to click the Continue with Offline option. So once I click that, it's going to load my MicroStrategy dossier, and we're going to get our dossier interface pulled up. So let me just make it a tiny bit bigger so that it's easier for us to see and for you all to follow along if that's what you decided to do. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what the MicroStrategy dossier interface looks like. If you are a MicroStrategy customer, it looks the exact same as on our library feature. But for those of you who are a little bit new, we'll give you a quick orientation so you understand where things are. Let's start all the way to the left on the Contents tab. So this section here is going to cover all of the different chapters and pages that you have within your dossier. In the MicroStrategy tool, every dossier is broken down into chapters that are then further broken down into different pages. So if you're trying to organize your information, it might be a good idea to put maybe all of your financial data in one chapter, and then you put all of your HR information in another chapter, and you can have subpages. Again, we're not going to focus on that too much today, but just so you know, it is out there and you can organize your information that way. Moving on to the Dataset tab, this is where we're going to actually see our data. It's empty right now because we don't have anything in there, but you can see that there's a couple of different types of data that I can bring in, whether I want to bring in new data, some existing data sets that my administrator has already created, or even existing objects. But again, we won't worry about that today. We're going to focus on the New Data button. Moving along to the third panel that we have, this is all of our editor panels. That's where we're going to do most of our work. So we're going to take a lot of the data that we have from the dataset pane, and then we'll build our visualizations in this section here. So we'll drag our data to the different pieces of the visualization that we need. We can do some formatting with them, even some filtering for our entire page, things along those lines. And then lastly, the most important part, and the one that takes up the most screen real estate, is our actual what you see is what you get interface. So you'll see that when I start building a visualization, it's actually going to show up there. I'm going to get a preview of what it looks like, and my data is going to render in real time. There's a couple of other things that we could go through, such as where we find our filters, our text boxes, our images, even our different visualizations, but we're going to do all of that in the actual tutorial, so bear with me, and thanks for your patience on that. So now that we know what MicroStrategy Workstation dossier editing interface looks like, let's look at the actual data that we're going to be using today. So I'll scroll over, and today we're going to be using Airbnb data. I figured let's think about where we want to travel next, where we might want to stay, and look at different Airbnbs that are available, in this case in the city of Barcelona. That's my favorite city, so that's the data that I chose for today's tutorial. You'll see that, and again, all of this is linked below if you want to follow along. All of the project files are in there, so you'll have access to the Excel file as well. So you'll see we have a lot of different information, such as the city we're looking at, the country. Are we looking at prices for the weekend or a weekday day? What type of room are we looking at? Is our host a super host? Are they a business? Maybe they're more of a contracting business that buys different places to rent out to folks. Is it how many folks can stay there? What's the guest satisfaction? A lot of things that are interesting like that. My favorite one is the ATTR index. That one is one that the folks who put this data set together created to talk about the attractiveness of that Airbnb. Is it close to restaurants? Is it close to your downtown mall, to your downtown attractions, whatever it might be. And then we do have a longitude and latitude, so we know exactly where that Airbnb is. So now that we know what our data looks like, let's actually get to importing it in MicroStrategy Workstation and start visualizing some of that so we can draw some insights. So I'll scroll back to my MicroStrategy Workstation interface. As I mentioned, we're going to go to that center dataset panel, and we're going to click the New Data button. Now, quick overview, there's a lot of different data that you can bring into MicroStrategy. They have 200 and some out-of-the-box connectors, so we're bringing in an Excel file, but if you wanted to bring in data from your Databricks or your Snowflake instance or whatever it might be, You can even copy and paste data if you wanted to. A lot of different options. So you might not have as many available on your screen because you're in the offline version, but just know that this is available to you if you ever wanted to kind of branch out and look at other types of data that you have available. So for our tutorial, we are going to go to the File from Disk option. So it should be the second one from the left all the way at the top. You'll see that I can bring in Excel files, JSONs, text, SAS data, things along those lines. So I'm going to pick that one, and then I'm going to choose the little blue Choose Files option. Now I'm going to go through my different folders and pull up the Airbnb data set that I have available, and I'll just click the Open. And again, I'm on Mac, but it's going to work the exact same way on PC as well. You can bring multiple files if you wanted to, but we're keeping it easy, and we're going to do one file for the sake of this presentation and this tutorial. So I'm going to prepare my data because I want to get a quick overview of what it looks like before I import it into MicroStrategy. Just make sure everything looks correct. So I'm not going to click the blue Finish button, but instead I'm going to click the Prepare Data option. So that's the middle button at the bottom right here. So we'll wait for that to load, and then you'll see that you have an option to bring in all of your different worksheets, just one of those worksheets. I'm going to bring just my Barcelona worksheet because I want to start with a small subset of data as I build this dossier, but you could bring in all of the different worksheets if you wanted to. I'll click Select, and now I'm going to get my preview pane. Now this is a very cool pane for us to look at, and it's an important one for us to keep in mind as well as we start building our dashboard. So let's talk a little bit about attributes and metrics. So MicroStrategy splits everything between being an attribute or a descriptor of data or being a metric, so the actual numerical data. So you'll see that my attributes are all in green, and there are even some sub-options of attributes available. Most of them are little green diamonds, but I also have the little location pin there. So that's MicroStrategy telling me, hey, you have geographical data. That might look good on a map or something like that. If we had some time, we could get a little time icon too. But again, let's take a look at all of the different ways that MicroStrategy has separated our data and just make sure it looks right. So again, my metrics are at the bottom, and then I have my attributes at the top here. Right away, I do see that MicroStrategy read my attractiveness index as an attribute, where I would actually like it to be a metric. So if I select my attractiveness index and also the normalized option there, the number of bedrooms, it also read as an attribute, but it's actually a number. So I'm going to want to convert that to a metric. Same with the cleanliness rating and then the guest satisfaction overall. So I just held down my little command button and then selected those 5. It would be Control if you're on PC. But I want to convert all of these to a metric. So again, that's very easy to do. All I have to do is right click on it, and you'll see that my second option is to convert to metric. You could do one by one, but I just decided to do it all at once so you don't have to see me click 3, 4, 5 different times. So now we'll see that my attractiveness index, the number of bedrooms, the cleanliness rating, all of that has been converted to a metric, and everything else looks pretty good to me, so I think I'm ready to import. So now that it's ready, we're just going to click the little blue Finish button, and as we see that load, we're going to see that all of our different attributes or metrics are going to be brought into our dataset panel here. So honestly, we're halfway there at this point. We've brought in our data, we've kind of cleaned up our data, we know where our data is from. Let's get to actually building this first dashboard. So the first thing that I want to know personally is, where are all of these Airbnbs located? Are they near La Rambla? Are they close to the beach? Are they close to the museums? Let me get an idea of geographically where are they located. So you'll see that by default, MicroStrategy chooses a grid as a way for me to visualize my data. I'm actually not going to do a grid to start out with. I'm going to do a map. So if you go to the very top right of your little visualization box here, you'll see that there's a little hamburger icon. I'm going to click on it, and then I'm going to select the first option, which is Change Visualization. So I told you we would get to this at the beginning, and now here we are. Here are all of the different options of visualizations that MicroStrategy offers. So we've broken them down into a couple of different sections. So you'll see all of my grids are put together. All of my more KPI-ish visualizations are in one section. Bar graphs, line graphs, your ring charts and your pie charts, your mapping options, which is what we're going to look at next. And then even the more section where you might have a histogram, a heat map, waterfall charts. Again, any visualization that you might need, it's probably in there somewhere. And even if you have a visualization that isn't necessarily on the list that we have available here, you can create custom ones, or you can even import ones that our community team has created. So again, lots of different options that you have there. And you see we have that little custom option at the very bottom there. So again, I'm going to create a map. So that's what I'm going to start out with. There's two different mapping options we're going to select, and I think yours might just show the map option. We do have geospatial services also. That's another topic that we can talk about another time, but we'll use the Esri map that we have available there. So I'm just going to click on it, and we'll see that my box is now going to start rendering an Esri map onto my canvas right there. So Esri does ship out of the box with MicroStrategy. Again, you don't have to pay for it. It's all available for you here. And it's all available for free, which is awesome. Now, the first thing I'm going to want to do is, again, I've got the latitude and the longitude of each of my different Airbnbs. So I'm going to drag those. Again, it's drag and drop. I don't need to code. I'm just going to drag my latitude. I'm going to drag my latitude attribute to the latitude section, and I'm going to drag my longitude attribute to the longitude section. And we'll see that as soon as I do that, MicroStrategy kind of zooms into Barcelona, and I see all of my different Airbnbs that are available here, which is awesome. So step one, we already have a beautiful map visualization created. I would call this a success so far. Now, knowing where my Airbnbs are is quite interesting, but I would like to see if the location of the Airbnb is going to correlate at all with the price of it. Maybe the more central I am to the city, the higher the prices are. That's going to be my guess, but let's see if that's actually true. So what I'm going to do is I have this little price metric that I'm going to drag to the color by section. So we'll do that and we'll wait for it to load. And then as soon as we do that, we already see that I've colored all of my different pins based on the price of that Airbnb. Now, I like the light blue to dark blue, but personally, I feel like it would make a little bit more sense if it was more of a red to green. So maybe green is very affordable, red is very expensive. But again, choose your own adventure. So let's see how we can actually change those thresholding colors there. So in the price metric that is in my color by box, I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to select edit thresholds. It should be right in the middle of the options that you have there. So you'll see MicroStrategy has a lot of different thresholding color schemes that you can pick from, whether you want to do yellows to greens or even tangerines. That's my personal favorite because orange is my favorite color. But we also do have some accessible ones if you're working with folks who are maybe colorblind or you want to just make sure that distinction is very clear. So a lot of different options that we can pick from. I talked about the red to green option, so I'm going to choose the tropical jungle, but again, you can make it your own and choose the color scheme that you prefer. I will keep everything else as is, and I will just click OK, and then we will see that our colors are going to change on the map there. And then I think actually in this case, it's telling us that green is more expensive and red is more affordable. So let's change that because that doesn't make intuitive sense to me. Again, we're going to go into our edit threshold, and instead of saying based on the lowest percentage, I'm going to switch that to the highest percentage. And then I'll just click that little blue OK, and we'll see that my colors are basically going to invert. So my initial hypothesis is pretty correct. If we kind of zoom in, anything that's in the central part of Barcelona, kind of close to where all those museums, maybe even Camp Nou are. They're a little bit darker red because they're more expensive. They're closer to 500 or 600 euros for the night or for the weekend. Whereas the Airbnbs that are a little bit further out into the mountains, again, we can see they're closer to 100 or 200 euros for the stay. So in this case, my hypothesis was correct, and this is already an insight that we've drawn in a matter of just minutes by visualizing all of this data geographically. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to actually want to name my visualization. So in this case, I will name it the Airbnbs by location and price. So the way we do that, again, we had that default title bar at the top here, but when I double click on it, I can rename my visualization and you can just type in the title that you want for your visualization. So this map is great and all, but the next thing I'm going to do is actually add some more context to the Airbnbs that I have mapped on this Esri map. So we'll see that I have the latitude and the longitude when I hover over it, as well as the price for that Airbnb. But I think it would be helpful to understand some other things, such as, was this data brought in from a weekday trip or a weekend trip? Maybe how many bedrooms that Airbnb has, because obviously if it's a really big Airbnb, it would make sense why it's a little bit more expensive, things along those lines. So you'll see that we have a little tooltip box at the bottom here. So we're going to add some more data to display there. So like I said, let's start with understanding, is this the weekday or weekend trip? We'll also add what kind of room is it? So is it a shared bedroom? Is it an entire Airbnb? And then I'll drag in as well the number of bedrooms and the guest satisfaction. I feel like those would both be interesting. So again, I can do a drag and drop. I can also double click if I wanted to, and that's going to bring it to my tooltip section here. So I'll do that for the last two metrics that we have available there. And so now when I hover over a visualization or over a little point on our visualization, I can see, okay, there were two Airbnbs. One, it's probably the same one that was available during the weekend and the weekday. They both had 100% guest satisfaction for one bedroom. It was a private room, not an entire apartment. But again, just understanding a little bit more about the data that we're showing and if we're giving this to an end user, giving us more context as to what those Airbnbs actually are. So now that we've built our first visualization, I'm going to actually take us through the saving process, because obviously we don't want to lose any of the progress that we may have made. So if we go to the top left section of our dossier editing interface, we have this little disk option, and that's our save button. You can also do a file and then save or save as, but I'm just going to click the little disk option. So you'll see that when you do that, it's going to prompt you to save your dossier on your local device. It's going to save it as a .mscr file. They don't take up too much space, but the beauty about a .mscr file is that if you save it locally to your desktop or your documents, whatever it might be, you can actually share that with other folks. And if they have MicroStrategy Workstation, they can then open your dossier up and view all of the work that you've done. Or if you have a MicroStrategy instance and your company actually has in an environment, you can upload that MicroStrategy file into the environment. So again, nifty little thing for us to know. So let's call this our Airbnb dossier version 1, something along those lines. And I'm just going to save it to my folder, and then I'm going to click Save. And that's it. Now we have all of our progress saved so far. So let's go on to create a couple more visualizations to fill up this space that we have here. So again, I can add a new visualization by going to the very top of my dossier editing interface, and I see the little visualization plus button. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to bring in a bar chart in this case. I like the horizontal bar charts just personally, but you could bring in any of the ones that are available there. So you'll see now that I click the little plus button and then I picked my bar chart, it shows up on the right-hand side of my MicroStrategy, on the right-hand side of my Esri map there. So I'm going to want to understand what types of Airbnbs do I have in the city of Barcelona. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have this little row count metric that's created by MicroStrategy as a default. That's just telling me the total number of rows in the data set that I brought in. In our case, this is essentially the number of Airbnbs, since each Airbnb has one row in our Excel file. So I'm going to right click on the row count in the dataset panel that I have here, and I'm going to rename it. And I'll just call it number of Airbnbs. And I'll press enter, and now we have that metric ready there. I'm going to drag this number of Airbnbs to the horizontal axis. You can, again, double click if you wanted to do that. And then I'll split it by the type of room that that Airbnb offers. So again, another visualization created. I now understand I have mostly private rooms in Barcelona, and then a couple of entire homes or apartments, and then also a couple shared rooms as well. So I'll rename this, another visualization created, Airbnbs by room type. And again, the way that we did that is we just double clicked on the visualization title, and then we just typed in our title for that visualization. Let's click another save so we save our progress. Now, the next question that I want to answer is how many superhosts do I have in the city of Barcelona? Is it mostly superhosts or is it mostly not? What's the breakdown of that? So let's add a visualization for that as well. I'm going to click my little plus visualization here. And again, I'm going to scroll down to the pie section there. And I personally like ring charts more than pie charts. I think they look more modern, but you do have both available. But I'm going to select the ring chart on the right-hand side here. So again, my ring chart shows up to the right of my other two visualizations, and I can start building onto it there. So let's try this double-clicking option out as well here. So we'll slice everything by the number of Airbnbs again. So I can just double click on that. It's going to bring it to the angle section automatically. MicroStrategy reads the data, understands where it should go. And then I'm going to split it by superhost question mark. So the answer is yes versus no. So I double click on that, and then again we see it show up in the color by and in the slice section. So again, really quickly, I now understand most of my Airbnbs are not superhosts. That would make sense. It's probably like an elite title to have as an Airbnb host. And just about 18% of them are. So again, just interesting things for me to understand. So I'll rename this again. I'll call it Airbnb by superhost status. Press enter, and then I'll do a quick save again. Now we're going to add one more visualization, and this time it's going to be one of my favorites. It's called the multi-metric KPI. So I feel like I have a good understanding of what's available out there, but let me get a quick overview of how many Airbnbs are available, what's the average number of rooms that are there, maybe their average cleanliness scores, things along those lines that give me just a higher level understanding of my entire data, basically looking at my data at an aggregate view. So I'm going to click the little plus visualization. Button again, and I'm going to scroll to the second option, which is a KPI section. And then I'm going to go to the second option, which is the multi-metric KPI. You can play around with some of the other ones too. They're all really cool and have their own purpose. But for the sake of what we're trying to do today, we're going to select the multi-metric KPI. So we'll click that one, and then we'll wait for it to load. Now, before I start building that one again, I can see that my entire dashboard is getting very kind of scrunched together, and I don't love the look that I have there. So it's really easy to move things around in MicroStrategy Dossier and to kind of rearrange our page to make sure we're using screen real estate the way that we should. So let's start by moving the ring chart under the bar chart here. We don't need both of them to have the full vertical screen real estate that's available there. So you'll see that when I hover over the title of my visualization, the little arrow that makes the plus sign shows up. I'm going to click and hold onto that one and then drag it around my canvas. So you'll see a little blue line is going to show up wherever the visualization is going to go next. So as long as I hold my click and I move it around, you'll see that blue line is going to move all around the canvas. But for my sake, I'm going to keep it and put it under the bar chart as I mentioned. So once I release of it, we'll see that my rank chart has moved to the area below my bar chart. So already this is looking a little bit less cramped in my opinion. I'm going to make one more move, and that's to move my multi-metric KPI visualization. I'm just going to bring it to the very top of my screen. You'll see if you go to the very top, you'll have the little blue line that covers the entire what you see is what you get interface section there. And when I let go of that, we'll see that it's taking the top half of that screen real estate that I have available there. And we can resize things that way too. If I go in between two visualizations, I'll have the little expand or contract arrows that show up, so I can shrink things as appropriate. And in this case, I'll just make it take maybe a quarter of the top real estate that's available. So let's build our final visualization. So let's drag in our number of Airbnbs. We'll drag that to the metrics section so I understand, okay, I've got 2,833 Airbnbs that I'm looking at. Next, let's do the number of bedrooms. Okay, it's telling me I have 3,290 bedrooms. That's telling me that by default, MicroStrategy is aggregating all of my data. It would make more sense if we were looking at this from an average perspective. So luckily, we can create that, what we call a derived metric, right on the fly, and it's a matter of, I think, 3 clicks. So let's do that together. So I'm going to go to the number of bedrooms metric that I have available, and I'm going to right-click on it. A lot of different things that I can do, but I'm going to select the aggregate by option, and then I'll select average. Now again, you can do minimums, maximums, counts, more complicated calculations like medians and modes and geometric means. Again, you can explore all of that on your own time, but for the sake of our tutorial, we're going to select the average section here. So let me remove the old number of bedrooms out of here, and then you'll see that I have the average number of bedrooms show up. So again, now this is making more sense to me. I have an average of 1 and some bedrooms in all of the Airbnbs that are available out in Barcelona, which makes sense to me at least. So now we know that probably the cleanliness rating, the guest satisfaction, all of those are going to aggregate all of the data that I have available. So let me create a couple of average metrics or average derived metrics for all of those so that it makes more sense when we're looking at it in a KPI visualization. So again, I'm just going to right click and I'm going to aggregate my cleanliness rating by an average. The same for the distance from the city center. I want to get an average of that. I'll also want to get an average of the guest satisfaction. Again, it's just a right click and then clicking average. And then let's also do an average of the nearest metro and an average of the, I think there's a person capacity. Maybe not. We'll stop with what we have so far. Now, all of these 4 new average metrics that I just created, I'm going to bring all of those into my multi-metric KPI visualization. So you can bring them in one by one if you wanted to, or I can hit the shift to select all 4 of them and then drag them right below my other metrics in the KPI visualization that I have there. Let's bring in one more metric in there, and it's going to be the attractiveness index, just so I understand on average how attractive are these Airbnbs. And again, I'll bring that to the bottom here to kind of complete my whole visualization there. So now we have a really good understanding of everything that's available out in Barcelona in Airbnb world. We've got 2,833 Airbnbs. Overall, my guests are mostly satisfied. They have a 91% satisfaction score. Most of the Airbnbs are about half a kilometer from the nearest metro, which is good to know. They're usually pretty clean, a 9.29 out of 10. But most of them are about 2 or more kilometers from the city center of Barcelona. So again, just understanding a lot more about what I have available here. And this gives me a quick snapshot of all of the data that I've brought in here. And then my readers can follow down to the rest of the dossier to look at more in-depth or row level data, depending on what's most important to them. So the last thing that I'm going to do is rename my visualization and call it Airbnb KPIs and click enter. So with that, we're pretty much done with the tutorial. We're going to do 2 other quick things available here. I want to show you how to bring in an image just because I think that really adds to your dossier or to your dashboard, and it makes it look a little bit more fun and more interactive. So I can do that by dragging in or clicking on the image, add an image button at the top of my dossier editing interface. So when I do that, we'll see that it shows up at the top, and I can actually put in either a file image that I already have or a URL, depending on what makes the most sense to you. So for my sake, I already have an image picked that I love of Barcelona, so I'm going to copy the URL of that one, and then I will paste it, click OK, and we'll see that our little image is going to show up. So we'll move it so that it takes up a little bit more of our screen real estate on the right-hand side. And I think this looks pretty put together. I can even mess around with how the image is put together. Does it fill the whole container? Does it stretch? Things along those lines. So feel free to explore some of the formatting options that are available there. So with that, I'm going to save, and then the one other thing that I'm going to do from an editing perspective is I'm going to add just a tiny bit of interactivity into my dashboard. I think this is something that's very useful for folks, so I wanted to show you all that before we wrap up. So let's say that I want to use one visualization to filter another one. I can do that very easily via the MicroStrategy Workstation and the Dossier tool. So for the sake of the use case that I'm going to put together is I'm going to want to be able to filter what's on the map and my superhost status by the different room types that I can click through. So let's say that this bar chart should target and filter my map as well as my rank chart available here. So what I'm going to do on the bar chart, I'm going to go up to the top. I'm going to select the little hamburger button, and then I'm going to scroll to about the middle of the options and choose the Select Target Visualization option. So once I do that, we'll see that I've selected my source, and then I'm going to decide that I want to filter all 3 of the other visualizations by the selections that I make in this bar chart. So I click on all of them. They'll get a little target box around them, and then I'll just click the apply button at the top right. And once I do that, nothing's going to change except for when I actually select a room type. So if I want to see where are all of my entire home Airbnbs, you'll see that I selected the bar here, and the rest of my visualizations are filtered for that little tag of entire home/apartment. The same if I select just the private room or even this tiny share of the 12 shared rooms that are available, I can see exactly where are those in Barcelona. Are people satisfied with them? Are they far from the city center? Are they expensive? Things along those lines. So with that, we've built our first dossier. Congratulations. Let's take a second to look at what our dossier could actually look like if we spent maybe another hour or 2 or brought in some more data. I think sometimes it's helpful to look at an art of the possible to see what could possibly be done through the MicroStrategy Workstation tool and using dossiers. So I did create one for you all to take a look at that includes data from a variety of different cities across Europe in this case. So you'll see here, we spent a little bit more time on formatting. We have a title page. We're still looking at Airbnbs based on the types of rooms that we have, but we can also filter down for specific cities. So whether I want to filter for Lisbon, again, that interactivity is brought into my dashboard there. And I can see that in Lisbon, there's a lot of entire homes and apartments that are available. I can even see more of them are superhost status. But again, I can click through the different options and different cities that are available to me and get an idea of how all of it is broken down and how the different cities differ too, depending on the types of Airbnbs that are available, as well as how expensive they are and things along those lines. So even from just looking at this grid here, I can see it's pretty cheap to stay in Athens compared to maybe in Amsterdam or in London or things along those lines. So again, just an art of the possible of things that you could do. And I encourage you to play around with MicroStrategy Workstation, bring in your own data, visualize it, work around with the colors of the data, understand how the different visualizations are all built together, and see what you can do with all of the data you have available and with the free tool that MicroStrategy made available to you all. With that, thank you so much for following along. Hopefully it was a productive session for you. If you want to sharpen your MicroStrategy skills or learn a little bit more, I recommend that you go to microstrategy.com/education, or you can email info@microstrategy.com and ask about one of our live working sessions. We'd be happy to connect with you and provide one of those as well. Thanks for watching. Join us next time.